Hello again. First off, thank you to everyone who has subscribed. I'm almost at 5,000 subscribers, so thank you very much. Now, this channel is all about simple and effective. I'm going to try and keep things as simple as possible, especially when it comes to the editing side. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at Photoshop and where to start. Okay, they're always adding new tools to Photoshop as well. So we're going to go back to basics. We're just going to start with the tools that we really need to start with and not worry about some of the more advanced things until later down the track. So what we're going to do is follow on from my previous videos on ways to start in Photoshop and just again, keeping everything very simple, very effective. And what we're going to do today is we're going to enhance our background. Okay, we're going to remove a distraction. We're going to blur our background even more, and we're going to sharpen our subject to create some separation. Okay, so normally I would say when you're out in the field, look for distractions in your background. Try not to shoot when there's things. In this case, the kangaroo came hopping out. I didn't have time to recompose or move. But you're going to have photos where you're not going to have time to think about it. You've just got to get the shot. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this because it's quite distracting. Now, lots of different ways of doing it, especially with all the AI that's in Photoshop these days. But look, AI, it's fine for social media. AI will remove things in a very low resolution manner. Okay, if we want to print this image nice and large, I can guarantee you if you remove that with AI, it's going to look horrible. Okay, AI is a very low resolution process. So what we're going to do is we're going old school. We're going to do this the way that we've been doing it for a long time. And what we do is we grab our lasso tool. So third tool down is our lasso tool. If we right click on that third box, it's going to show us options. So you might find that you're on a different option. Lasso tool works good. Okay, and we're just going to trace around the object we want to remove. Right click, content aware fill. What content aware fill will do, it will sample pixels around the area we've selected. So then it's removing and replacing it with actual pixels, not artificially generated what it thinks should be there. Okay, and then we're just going to hit OK. And as you can see, it does a pretty good job. Okay, so there's before and there's after. Okay, not perfect, but pretty good. So now I'm just going to go layer, flatten image. If we wanted to get really fussy, which I do like to get fussy, I'm going to come in and we can see that when it's done its content aware, it sampled some of this grass down here that was in focus. So you can see that it's not exactly perfect. Now we're going to blur this background anyway, so I'm not too concerned. But another good way of just removing little things and still retaining pixel to pixel information is our clone stamping tool. If we just hover over these tools on the left side, it will show you what they are. So clone stamping tool is another really good tool for removing things pixel by pixel. The way the clone stamping tool works is if we hold the Alt key, you'll come up with a little target. So that target will target exactly where you click. So I'm still holding the Alt key. While holding the Alt key, I'm going to sample over here, for example. So I've just clicked there. And now when I move, what it does, it samples that area. And you'll see that it's starting to bring in a bit of the kangaroo as well. So square bracket keys will make our brush a bit smaller. And now I'm just going to paint over here and it's sampling areas from over where I've selected the target. So that way we get pixel to pixel remove, okay? Unlike the AI, which is just a low resolution version. Okay, so there, that looks a bit nicer. And you can even see where the content aware, it has selected, there's some blades of grass there that are exactly the same. So again, if I want to use my content aware and I don't want those two exact, or there's even three of them, I don't want them to be all exact, I'm just going to sample up here, for example, and paste that down there. Okay, I might want to bring that blade of grass over here just to even things out. Okay, so I can sample wherever I want. I can even sample over this side of my image and stamp it over here. Okay, so I might like this leaf. I want to bring this leaf over here as well. Okay, so the clone stamp tool, hold the Alt key, select the part you want to clone, and then you can use it to either remove things or copy things from one side to the other. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've gotten rid of our distraction. What we're going to do now is separate our subject from our background. The easiest way to do this, and Photoshop does it best, okay? Photoshop selection tool is really good. So what I'm going to do, first thing I'm going to do is come up and select my lasso tool. Okay, so with the lasso tool selected, that gives us an option to select and mask. Okay, but the first thing we want to do is actually select something so we can mask it. So if we come up to select, come down to subject, and Photoshop generally does a really good job of selecting subjects. And as you can see, it's done an almost perfect selection. The good thing with the select tool is we have more options. So now with our lasso tool selected, we get this select and mask option. If you've got your move tool, you don't have that option. Some of these tools will work, some of them won't. The lasso tool, it gives you that option. Now that we've selected our subject, we want to go to select and mask and make it even better. Okay, the selection's okay. Now by default, I think by default it might be on marching ants maybe. If we come up to this view, you can change it to black and white. You can change it so it's got like a red overlay, which is the one I do prefer. We get a few different options in here to change our overlays and how we see the image. Now, at any time, feel free to pause this because these are the settings that I find work the best. Okay, I have a radius of 1 pixel. I have my smoothness at 5. I have my feathering at 1 pixel, and the rest I kind of leave. The most important one here is our output settings. So you may just need to click your little drop down to see your output settings. And we want to create a new layer with a layer mask. That is very important for what we're about to do. New layer with a layer mask. Okay, so that's our right-hand side panel selected. Now, when it comes to portraits, whether we've got hair or fur, any sort of fine detail, this is where Photoshop comes into its own. So if we go over to the top left-hand side, we have a few tools. So the quick selection tool, if it misses any area, we can start to paint in with the plus areas that it may have missed. Okay, if we hold our Alt key, that will undo areas we don't want to affect. Okay, Photoshop just keeps getting better and better. These days, it does a really good job at selecting subjects. So to the top left-hand corner, we have what's called our Refine Edge Brush tool. Now, this is really good. There is also a Refine Hair. Again, this can be a bit hit and miss. Give it a try. If you hit Refine Hair, Photoshop will do its thing and it is a bit hit and miss, to tell the truth. I prefer to use my Refine Edge Brush tool because then what I can do just by using the square bracket keys, I can make this brush as big or as small as I like. And then I can just select areas. So I can see there's lots of fur along the back here. There's a bit of fur down here. And I can actually select the areas that I want to refine that edge over. Okay, if you find that it goes too far, hold the Alt key and then you can undo what it's just painted out. Okay, so you'll sort of see little areas just by painting along that edge. The Refine Edge tool does a really good job. So now that I've refined the edge as much as I want, I'm going to press OK. Okay, so then it creates a new layer with a layer mask. And now we've just selected our subject. The beauty of a layer mask is if we zoom in, we can see that it's taken away a little bit from the eye. So just with our layer mask selected, if we grab our brush tool and we're on a white brush, we'll turn our opacity up to 100%, make that brush nice and small. Okay, we can paint in the bits that it's missed. Okay, so it will occasionally do that, especially with the Refine Edge Brush tool. You might find that it's, for here, it's missed a bit. So in that case, I want to remove that. So if I press X, I can black out the bits I don't want it to affect. But overall, it does a really good job. And then we've got our background layer. So now we've selected our subject. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work on our background. So with the background select, I'm going to hide our subject for now. With our background selected, I'm going to make a copy. So Control or Command and J will make a copy. That way our background's locked. We can't do anything with that at this stage. I like to have it there just as a reference point. Now, what we want to do is we want to blur this background to create a bit more of a 3D effect and just take away some of that grass. The grass didn't quite throw out enough. The kangaroo was very close, so we didn't get that separation. So what we're going to do is blur our background. Now, this is the tricky bit. If we just come up to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur, it blurs the whole image, including the kangaroo. So if I was to blur it at that, for example, when I put my kangaroo back, you're going to see a bit of a halo where the kangaroo's blurred in the background. Okay, so I'm just going to undo what I just did. With that top layer still hidden, we don't need to work with that top layer yet. That's just our subject. So we're going to select our background copy. And again, lasso tool, I'm going to trace around the kangaroo. And similar to what we did before, instead of removing that object to the side, we're going to remove our kangaroo. So again, right click, content aware fill. Okay, it'll show you a preview. That looks pretty good. Press OK. Okay, and now our kangaroo's been removed from the background as well. All right, now this part doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to blur it anyway. So if we, with that layer selected, what I like to do is hold the control, select these two layers, so our kangaroo and our removed kangaroo, right click and just merge those layers. So now we've got our original image, we've got our background image, and then we've got our subject. So again, hide our subject. We're just going to work on our background. Now if we come up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, now we can blur the background and not get that halo. Okay, so now with a radius, this is all personal preference. With an image like this, yeah, look, if I was going to do it, I would probably just do it subtly, just to soften the background a little bit. But for the sake of YouTube, let's crank it up. Let's really throw that background out of focus and show you how we can make it look fairly natural. Okay, press OK. Now, if we put our subject on there, it looks completely fake. Okay, it doesn't look very nice at all. So what we're going to do with our subject selected, and this is why we create the layer mask, because we have the layer mask selected, we still have everything in that original background layer. So what I can do is I can select that layer mask, come over to my brush tool, grab a white brush, turn our opacity up to 100%, our flow at 100%, our smoothing at 0, and then if I just square bracket keys to make a slightly bigger brush, right click, make sure our hardness is at 0. Now that is important because that'll give us a nice soft transition. So hardness at 0, and then if I start to paint on this layer mask with a white brush, it's going to start to bring in some of the original image. Now, if I just zoom out a little bit, make our brush even bigger, what we can do is we can slowly transition into that blurry background, just to make it look a little bit more natural. Okay, so there's the original image, and there we've just blurred the background a little bit. Okay, from here we can just drop the opacity down. If you find that it's blurred too much, you can drop your opacity. Or with the layer mask selected, we can turn down the opacity of our brush and then slowly start to fade it so it gets blurrier and blurrier the further away we get. Okay, and gives it a slightly more natural look. Now, another good trick is, especially, as good as the select tool is and the refine edge, if we come in nice and close, okay, and if I hide that background, you're going to see that it's missing quite a bit of the fur. Okay, especially down here. Let's just go down here, for example, on the arm. Now, it's done a good job. But again, if we select that layer mask with a white brush, our opacity down very low, make our brush nice and small, and then we can just refine it again just by painting along that area. Now, it's going to bring a little bit of the background back into focus, but you'll find that just by getting in nice and tight and just refining it with a nice soft brush, we can start to, we're back on that original layer. And again, that's why very important to use a layer mask, okay, because then we can paint in or paint out whatever we want with our black and white brushes. Okay, so I'm sort of painting around that edge just to bring back that fur even further. and start to reveal a little bit more of what's in the background. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. Okay, so there's our before and there's our after. We've just blurred our background a little bit. Okay, and again, you can go as far as you want. To me, that's probably overkill. We don't need to blur it that much. I would probably just blur it a little bit. But that's a good way of separating your subject from a background. Sharpen your subject, blur your background, and it'll give it that more of a 3D look. Okay, dare I say it'll give it that nice shallow depth of field that you only get with your really expensive lenses. Okay, now there are other ways of using the blur tool. As a quick example, if we come back up to filter, blur gallery, you have one called field blur where you can just select certain parts of an image to blur. So if I was to select over here, just by clicking little droppers, we can blur that even more, okay, just by choosing certain areas. So lots of filters to play around with in Photoshop. Just start with the basics. Get used to creating layer masks before you start to get into some of the more advanced filters. Okay, so that's a good place to start. Hopefully you did find that useful. That's it for this video. Nice quick one today. Again, I'm just going back and trying to remember how I started with Photoshop. And this is kind of how I started with Photoshop. Just some very basic tools, playing around with layers, opacities. Okay, and again, because we've blurred that layer, you know, we can dial it back and just blur it a little bit if we want to, so then it looks a little bit more natural. Okay, still lots more we can do, but I'm just going to keep it simple. Keep it simple, little bits at a time. All right, that's it. Hopefully I'll be live soon. It's currently raining here at the moment, so I haven't been able to get out. But hopefully the next time you see me, I will be live. And until then, thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon. Thank you.